religion, Christianity and Islam. It's great to see that so many of you are here. I feel like a rock star, which is quite exhilarating, I must say. We will have 3 speakers today who I'll introduce in more detail when it's their turn. Marina Nemat, Dr. Ismail Junaid Güzey, and Reverend Olav Fixetsvej. And I myself am Ulrika Mårtensson. I have a Swedish background but work here in Norway at NTNU in religious studies. And my research fields are in Islamic studies and with a focus on religion and politics. And the program I'll take you through is that we start with a brief introduction, well, quite brief introduction by myself, followed by the 3 speakers in turn. This should be finished by 8 o'clock, at which point we take a break, start again at 8:15, and have discussion and Q&A with the audience. So the issue at stake here is discrimination, which, just using a simple definition, means treating a person or a particular group of people differently, especially in a worse way from the way in which you treat other people because of their skin color, sex, sexuality, etc., and one could add religion. So the question that the organizers asked us to address is religion itself discriminating? And 2, does there exist discrimination within and by different religions? And then I thought that as a frame for thinking about these 2 questions, we could use a focus on law and legal contexts. So I suggest that we think about this topic in terms of right. And right is both an epistemic truth claim, what is right, but it's also a legal claim. One has a right to something. So my questions are then, what legal, political and institutional protection of rights are we dealing with? And who defines rights and what their substance is? To give you some just historical background to this, if we look at the medieval or pre-modern European Christian polities that you see here on the map, changing boundaries a bit, but basically with either the Catholic Church or Catholic and Protestant polities, one could say that there was no one legal system that protected rights in a systematic manner. There was, of course, lots of discrimination going on. Religious discrimination, both internally within Christianity against different churches, but also against other religions. Sex and gender discrimination, class, there was serfdom, etc. Moving on in European history to the Enlightenment, which is late 1600s and the 1700s, we get the so-called social contract theories. And a social contract is a theory about the relationship between the ruler and the ruled in terms of defining their rights and duties. So we do get a movement towards more consistent rights-based law with civil rights, including religious tolerance. Still, discrimination was going on in societies at different levels, so there was still degrees of religious discrimination, both internally and within Christianity and against others. Sex, gender, still carrying on, class, race emerging not as a phenomenon maybe, but as a new theory and a
particular theories about race and races. Slavery as an institution is also current. We can then reverse back in time and compare, because the focus is also on Islam, not just Christianity and Christian polities, but also Islamic ones. Pre-modern Islamic polities from 622 to 1924 had a different situation. There were social contract theories in place, and the law was essentially rights-based, stating that the subjects had right to legal protection of their life, religion, property, intellect, and offspring. There was still discrimination within Islam against different Islamic schools and groups, and towards other religions as well. Gender discrimination, one can say, slavery, and class. And then I'll take you through a short little exercise in Quran interpretation, just to illustrate what the kind of rights-based thinking was about. The example is from the Quran chapter 4, or Surah 4, which is termed Women, verse 1. O people, fulfill your obligations towards your Lord, who created you by cleaving asunder one person and thereby creating from it its other half. Then, my favorite Quran commentator and jurist, who lived in the late 800s, died 923, Muhammad ibn Jarir al-Tabari, he interpreted this verse and said, God means by his speech, O people, fulfill your obligations towards your Lord, who created you by cleaving asunder one person. He meant, he described himself as the one who has created all the diverse beings from one individual, to let his servants know how he issued forth all that from one person. Thus he informs them that since they are all offspring of one man and one mother, and are therefore all from one another, they are obliged to uphold each other's rights as brothers. They are obliged to act kindly, not oppressively towards each other, so that the strong uphold the rights of the weak in accordance with what God has commanded them. Now, today, we refer, when we speak of rights and in the sense of human rights, to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights from 1948. You see on the picture Eleanor Roosevelt, who chaired the committee that produced this document, and it says in the preamble, whereas recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world, Article 1, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. So she reads out, when she did so, the same basic view of humanity as created out of one, it's one big family, they're all brothers, and therefore, being in this way, they all have the same rights. It is not very far from the language and the images used by this Muslim jurist who died in 923. So protection of rights and the assumption that humanity is one and essentially equal in rights is not unique to the United Nations. The ideas have been around before, even if not fully implemented. Now, when it comes to religion, the Human Rights Declaration has Article 18 is crucial. Everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes freedom to change religion or belief, and freedom either alone or in community with others and in public or private, to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship and observance. And this is very important, manifest publicly also your religion. In modern nation states in the Middle East and North Africa, we have a lot of different constitutions, but no social contracts and no or weak rights protections, I would say generally. There are exceptions, but if we generalize, and discrimination is going on. Religion, gender, ethnicity, class, and critics of the political system are all subject to discrimination. This is not necessarily because these countries have Islamic laws. Most of the countries actually don't. So we can discuss that issue. Moving on rapidly, because my time is running out, to the European Union, plus minus the United Kingdom. The European Convention of Human Rights, in its version since 2010, says that freedom to manifest one's religion and belief is subject to limitations prescribed by law which are necessary in a democratic society in the interests of public safety, for the protection of public order, health or morals, and for the protection of the rights and freedoms of others. And here is where countries get space to negotiate what does it mean, the right to manifest your religion in public. And let us rapidly, very rapidly, look at a quantitative survey of data on Muslims living in the United Kingdom, France, Germany, and the Netherlands. Quantitative data shows that Muslims are more religious than average, but also slightly more supportive of democracy, slightly more trusting in state authorities, slightly more optimistic and satisfied than average, even though they are less economically and politically empowered, and even though they experience more discrimination on grounds of religion and ethnicity. And since religion is more important to Muslims, it is striking that they also experience more discrimination. Move on to Norway, where we are now. This autumn, the think tank Agenda issued 10 commandments for improved integration, where they suggest banning the full-face veil, niqab, in schools, but also preventing hijab, the use of the Muslim women's headscarf in primary and secondary school, arguing that hijab is an obstacle to integration and should therefore be prevented and deterred from use. Very briefly again, there has been a study from junior high schools in Denmark showing that girls in schools who wear hijab are sidelined by their teachers. They are cold-shouldered. Muslim pupils who fast are forced to sit in lunch cantinas with the other students. And classroom discussions often criticize Muslim family values in such a way that some Muslim pupils feel that they are sort of have to lie rather than be caught criticizing their families. So, this is an issue for discussion, I would suggest. But also, to conclude, in Scandinavia, it is easy to think that criticism of religion somehow is just natural because of the way religious people behave, but we have political parties who specialize. They actually campaign for voters by referring to particularly Muslims and the way Muslims behave. And this started in Norway already in 1987 when the leader of the Progress Party, FRP, said that Muslims have been declaring that they aim to take over Norway and turn it into a Muslim country. Since then, they have been campaigning on the topic of sneak Islamization or sneak Islamisering. But we also have similar parties in Sweden and in Denmark. So they contribute a lot to a public debate about things related to Islam, etc. Suggesting that the political aspect of these policies, such as the ones practiced in Denmark and the ones suggested in Norway, also may have political backgrounds. And now I have exceeded my time, so I'm stopping right here and proceeding to our first speaker, Marina Nemat, who is of Iranian background but lives in Canada. She is a human rights activist and an author of 2 books about her life in Iran, which she will also tell us more about. So please, Marina, welcome.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that very thorough introduction. Now, my approach is going to be different because my colleagues here are much more educated than I am. So I will be speaking about my own personal experience. I was born in Iran. And when I was growing up in Iran, Iran was under the reign of the king, the Shah, and was governed by secular laws. When I was 13 years old, the Islamic Revolution of 1979 happened. Now, growing up in Iran during the time of the Shah, when Iran was not an Islamic republic, I was your average teenage girl. I wore my green polka dot bikini on the beach. My friends and I, we would take our boom boxes to the beach and we would be dancing to the tunes of the Bee Gees. And I was the furthest in the universe from being socially aware. All I cared about was boys and parties. And I basically just cared about that. And I wanted to go to medical school, become a medical doctor, hopefully marry Donny Osmond and live happily ever after. So that was me. And then in 1979, when I was 13, to me, out of the blue, the Islamic Revolution happened. And I watched it from my window as the street filled with angry demonstrators yelling, "Death to America, death to Israel, death to imperialists, death to communists, death to everybody." And I didn't know where this anger was coming from. But I very soon discovered that the Shah, the king, was a dictator. I had no clue. I had my personal freedoms. I didn't care about political freedoms. I didn't know what political freedoms even meant at the age of 13. No clue. But it was a crash course. I very quickly discovered that if you criticize the government, you would go to prison. And Ayatollah Khomeini, a religious leader who had turned very political, had become the leader of this revolution. And the left and the right, they supported him to unite the people of Iran and to create democracy in Iran. Now, the Ayatollah wanted Iran to become something called an Islamic Republic, but the problem was that I asked the people on the street, and nobody even knew what an Islamic Republic was. I asked the people, what is an Islamic Republic? And nobody knew, because the constitution to this idea of Ayatollah Khomeini had not even been written yet. Long story short, the revolution happened. And for about a year, it was actually great because this new constitution had not been written yet. All the old laws were out the window. And trust me, when you're 13 and there's no law, it's the best thing that ever happened to you. Trust me. It was fun. I mean, for about a year, we did whatever we wanted. We read everything. We discussed everything. Suddenly, I was reading Marx and Lenin, and I had never, ever heard the words Marx and Lenin before because it had been illegal during the time of the Shah. But now we were all talking about social justice, about making Iran a better place. And let me tell you, there has never been a revolution in the history of mankind where people get onto the street and they say, we want a horrible dictatorship. No, people want freedom and democracy, but this is not necessarily what they get. So in Iran, that constitution was written. And that 1 year of the honeymoon after the revolution expired. So very soon, I looked around me. Dancing had become illegal. Singing had become illegal. Holding your boyfriend's hand in public had become illegal. Wearing makeup had become illegal. Now, please keep in mind, I had grown up in a bikini on the beach dancing to the Bee Gees. So the idea of not being allowed to wear makeup, the idea of not being allowed to party was very difficult to swallow. So I protested, not just me, my friends and I. I mean, you tell a 14-year-old she's not allowed to have fun, you're going to have a problem. So we were on the streets protesting, not because we were, again, very socially aware. I mean, we were slowly getting there, but simply because we wanted to have fun. And then, in 1981, in the spring, young people were being arrested in mass numbers, and I was one of them. So I was taken to Evin prison, the biggest political prison in Iran, and it is located north of Tehran, and it is still 100% operational. I was blindfolded upon arrival. I was 16. I was taken into hallway after hallway. I was told to sit down. I couldn't see a whole lot, very little from underneath the blindfold. Eventually, somebody called my name. I was taken into a room, and a man asked me, "Have you attended protest rallies against the government?" I said, "Yeah." He asked me, "Have you written articles against the government?" I said, "Yes, in my school newspaper." It was not a state secret. My parents knew I attended rallies. My friends knew I attended rallies. The principal, the teachers, everybody knew I attended rallies. So I said, "Yeah." He asked me, "Where's Shahzad?" He said, girl's name. I didn't know her address. She was a friend of mine. I didn't know where she was. Absolute truth. I was 16. I wasn't the perfect political prisoner in any shape or form. So they took me to another room, and there they took off my blindfold. I was in a small room with two men, Ali and Hamid, and they handcuffed me. When they handcuffed me, they laughed because I was 90 pounds, and they realized my hands are going to slide out of the cuffs. So they put the two wrists into one cuff, and as it clicked, my right wrist cracked. And the torture had not even begun. At that point, if the devil was so kind to appear and say to me, "Marina, just sell me your soul, I will get you back home to your mom," I would have sold my soul with whipped cream and a cherry on top. I would have done anything to get out. Again, I was not your perfect political prisoner in any shape or form. But it was not an option. They tied me to a bare wooden bed. I was lying down on my stomach, and they took off my socks and my shoes and lashed the soles of my feet with a length of cable. And by cable, I mean cable. Think garden hose, but it is heavy, full rubber. And these men, they mean it. They mean it. This is the most common method of torture in the Middle East. Why? Because our nerve ends are in our feet. So they beat me and beat me and beat me. And eventually, when they stopped, I sat up, I looked at my feet, I laughed my head off. It was funny. I looked like Bugs Bunny. You know, really big feet. Because I had swollen so much. My feet looked like overgrown party balloons with toes on them, color indigo blue. Now, the thing is, when these men were beating me, they were not even asking any questions anymore. They just beat me. Now, long story short, it's a very long story. I have written about it. But I was forced to marry one of my interrogators. Well, marry, it was rape, legalized rape, under the name of marriage. I didn't have a say. I didn't have a choice. If I didn't, my family would be harmed. So I was being raped over and over again under the name of marriage in solitary confinement in Evin prison. And according to Iranian law, it was absolutely legal. I had no right. Nothing whatsoever. Now, I'm one of the lucky ones. My best friend, Shahnoush, she was executed at the age of 15 in Evin prison. We don't even know where she's buried. She's buried in a mass grave. And I stand here as a witness. As a witness to those who died, to those who were not lucky enough like me to stand here in front of you and tell the story. But what's the point of doing this? I mean, day in, day out, I talk about things that makes me want to vomit. Why am I doing this? I ask it from myself all the time. My question, I think we can summarize that in one question. Who is the real enemy here? Is it some religion? Is it some ethnicity? Is it some government? Is it a people? No. The men who tortured me were Muslim. But I do not hate Muslims. There are good Muslims and there are bad Muslims out there. There are good Christians and there are bad Christians out there. There are good Jews and there are bad Jews out there. Yes, there are terrorists out there who are Muslim. But does that mean all Muslims are terrorists? No. And this is what my friends died for. We didn't stand up only for a specific religion or for a specific people. When it is said, like in the introduction, it was said that in schools they are telling girls that they are not allowed to wear the hijab. That bothers me, even though I protested because I didn't want to wear the hijab. But it's the same idea, don't you see? So if someone tells me that I have to wear the hijab, I'd rather die. Shoot me. I used to be afraid when I was 16, but now I'm not afraid anymore. I don't care. Please do shoot me. Because you know what? My friend died when she was 15, a horrible death. And at 51, I'm standing here. It's a funny game with numbers. 15, 51. I'm supposed to be dead. What am I doing here? It bothers me. This makes me uncomfortable, but I do this because my friends died. Now, when we tell a young woman who has chosen to wear the hijab that she's not allowed to do it, it's like you spit on my friends' graves. People died so that we as women have the freedom to choose what to wear and what not to wear. So that we don't judge another by their religion, by their ethnicity, by their color of skin, by any of the above. When I speak up to stand by my Muslim brothers and sisters online on Facebook, I'm branded as an apologist for Muslims. Seriously? Seriously. And when I say out and loud and clear that I am a Christian, I was born in a Christian. I'm a Christian. People call me a various number of other different names. Look at what is happening in the United States of America right now. This is terrifying. So I ask you to pause and to think about all the young and old people who died so that you and I have the right and the ability to sit here and to talk about all of these things. I choose to believe that they didn't die in vain. I choose to believe that there is no real animosity between Judaism, Islam, Christianity, etc., etc., etc. As people, we make that choice. It has nothing to do with God, by the way. We want to have power over another. We use God as an excuse. Please don't do it. And please don't allow others to use your human emotions, including fear, to manipulate you in one direction or another. We have more in common than we have in difference. Let's stand together. Let's not allow those who want to use us, turn us against one another in the name of God, in the name of ideology, in the name of politics, in the name of national security. It's all a whole bag of lies. We are all brothers and sisters at the end of the day. And we should be allowed to dress the way they want, practice the religion that we want, and live the way we wish, as long as we do not interfere with the rights of others. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you so much, Marina. Our second speaker is Dr. Ismail Cüneyt Güzey, who is from Turkey originally, but has lived a long time in Norway, and here in Trondheim particularly.
Jeg er fra Verdalen, faktisk.
Verdal, yeah. So Junaid is a researcher in psychiatry, are written here, but you can nuance that, here at NTNU, and also an active member of the Muslim Society in Trondheim, which is the oldest mosque here in town, and a member of the Muslim-Christian dialogue that goes on in Trondheim. So, very welcome, and the word is yours.
Thank you very much. Euzubillahimineşşeytanirracim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Velhamdülillahi Rabbil alemin. Rabbi şrah li sadri ve yessir li emri ve ahlul uqdeten min lisani yefqahu qawli. First, I would like to thank to ISFIT for arranging this. And Gestapo is waiting there, checking the time. So let's see how this will go. I would like to thank ISFIT, first of all, not only for organizing this event, but also choosing such a relevant topic. And the topic is very relevant because discrimination is an experience we all have. It's a part of the human experience. I don't think there is anybody here who can say that I never got discriminated. If you look deep into your heart, you will find a time and space where you felt excluded, discriminated, looked down at, you didn't feel uncomfortable, or made feel uncomfortable. That is the essence of discrimination. And it seems that we all do that. It's a very weird phenomenon. It's very unpleasant. Nobody likes it. Everybody criticizes it. But it's still a part of common human experience, and it goes very deep. And when I'm asked to talk about discrimination and religion, I said, wow, that's interesting. I will talk about that. And then they told me that I have 15 minutes. Well, it was too late. So I have to expect. So what can you give in 15 minutes as a message which is clear and which will make an impact? How to summarize this? So as a Muslim, I have to go back to the Quran and look into the book of Allah. And I found one verse which kind of gave me a hint about it. In chapter 3, verse 173, Allah says, those to whom the hypocrites said, the people who said that we are believers but they weren't, indeed the people have gathered against you, so fear them. So these people came to them and said, hey, they are gathering against you. Be afraid of them. To whom? To the believers. But it merely increases them in faith. So the believers were not afraid. That just increased their belief. And they said, sufficient for us is Allah. God is sufficient for us. And He is the best of the guardians. Hasbinallahu wa ni'mal wakil, for those who are Muslim. Which is a prayer that we frequently repeat. God is my guardian, and He is sufficient for me. So I found some hints in this. Why do we discriminate, really? As a researcher, I have to look at it in a more objective way and try to find some hints. Apparently, if everybody feels discriminated at some point, it means that we are also in the giving end of this phenomena, because a few people can't make everybody experience this. There are not enough people then. Then it means that sometimes we are discriminated, sometimes we are discriminating. And the reasons for discrimination vary a lot. There are the general ones that, as you have named, the race, nationality, religion, political view. These are common. But there are all these other, we humans we are very creative in finding excuses for that. It can be because you're too tall, or because you're too short. It can be because you're too fat. This is not a suicide belt, although it's killing me slowly. It's a slow motion suicide belt. So you can be discriminated because you are from the wrong country, or from the wrong town in the same country, or from the wrong area of that town. There is no end to this. And you can get discriminated because of the football club, or because you have an iPhone or an Android these days. I'm sure this audience will understand this best. So apparently, This is so common. So how can we find a hint in the phenomena to see why this is happening? And the answer is, if you, for example, how about this hypothesis? If we say, is it possible that this is the importance of the reason of discrimination is somehow connected or correlated with how hard you get discriminated? You know, probably a political revolution going on and all these things can cause an important is an important thing, so maybe people get more discriminated and tortured for this. But in the meantime, people get killed because of football. If you're wearing the wrong football uniform in the wrong part of the town in Newcastle, where I lived, it's dangerous. You can get killed for this, or you can get physically harmed. How about that for a reason? So that doesn't make very much sense, does it? What other reasons can it be? Is it possible that certain times we discriminate each other more? Yes, partially. For example, if there is an economical crisis, it's more likely that parties who are with extreme thoughts get more support. When there is economic crisis, racism gets up, which happens a lot. There are many examples of that in the history. But then again, in a country like Norway, where everything is most of the time quite rosy, there is no economic crisis, we are rich, everything is working very well, still the king of Norway had to make a point and speak about mobbing in his annual speech some years ago. So apparently this is not a good enough reason. So what is the insecurity that is making us mob each other, discriminate each other so much? Why would you feel insecure against a 16-year-old girl who wants to party? Because why would you be afraid of this? Because people who discriminate are people who are afraid. They have an existential anxiety that we all have, but they build onto that. What is that we human beings are scared of? Why do we have this problem? I think the reason is that we are not able to figure this thing out. This is a very scary experience for us. We are conscious, we are intelligent, we come to this world, we look outside, but we can't figure this out. 90% of the matter in this room is something called black matter, and we have no idea what it is. We have no idea about any of its properties. We calculate that it exists, but we don't know what it is. And this is causing an anxiety in us. 5, all right. 4. So there are some neurological conditions where people forget the last 3 or 4 minutes, or sometimes the last 3 or 4 days. Let me give you a quick example. Let's assume that on your way out, your phone rings, your best friend is on the phone. He says, you know what, my grandmother just passed away. I bought a ticket to Brazil for a 3-day holiday just yesterday. I'm not able to go. Would you take it for me? Who says no? Nobody. So you take the trip, you are in Brazil, you wake up, and this thing happens to you. The last thing you remember is this, me speaking. What a horrible thing, isn't it? And you don't know where you are. You don't understand the language. You wake up in this hotel room. You don't know how you ended up there. It's very scary. What do you look for, apart from your iPhone? So that you take a selfie and you do all this business. But after that, you look for someone that you can relate to make an alliance, who will protect you. You get out to the room, you get out of your room, look for somebody maybe from Norway. Wouldn't it be wonderful to meet somebody from Norway who will explain you what the hell happened? Even someone from Sweden will do, I think. It's that bad. If you find a few people, you're used to it. That's discrimination. No speech about discrimination is complete without you discriminating some people from Sweden. And in the meantime, the more people you find within the same situation, the more relaxed you are. You have to form some alliances. You find somebody who is wearing a Manchester United shirt, and you have one. Maybe this guy will be your friend. So you go to him. You are trying to survive. But in the meantime, let's say that when you're sitting in your room, that's where religion comes in. Somebody is at the door, goes. You look through the chain and you say, who's that? And the guy says, I'm Faith. Can I come in? My name is Islam. Now, it's your choice. Are you going to let this guy in or not? I'm somebody who did let this guy in. So I say, Vershagu, please come in. He explains you what has happened. He says, I'm religion, I'm faith. You are here for a reason. This is a hotel room. You will not be here for very long. Don't worry about it. You're safe. Your luggage is in the airport. You'll be going back in a few days. Food is paid for. It's served 3 times a day downstairs. Just be wary of. There are some local dishes which are not very good. Avoid them, like alcohol and pork. Here is a phone number of the president. He knows about you. He has office hours 5 times a day. Actually, it's often 24/7, but you should also stick to the office hours. How relaxed would you be now if somebody says that the king of Brazil, if there is a king, I don't know, knows about you. He cares about you, and he's protecting you. Wouldn't all you... I used to say this for the president of America, but obviously nowadays it's not a good... I don't want a call from Trump. I really, really don't. But in any way, this would be a total relaxation. And this will solve your problem. That's where exactly the religion comes in, and that's where you say, Hasbinallahu wa ni'mal wakil. Allah is sufficient for me, and He is the best of the guardians. Once this reason of anxiety is taken away, you don't need to make friends with the Swede outside. You can be more picky now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Junaid. I mean, we have a lot of ways of tackling this, us Swedes, such as, oh, they're just envious or something like that, but there you go.
Being discriminated by a Turk.
That's okay, but Norway, Sweden is the sensitive part. So, our third speaker is Reverend Olav Fikse Tveit, who is from Norway and actually from Trøndelag, from across the fjord originally, and has now become the Secretary General of the World Council of Churches. And his special area in the World Council is interfaith dialogue, with particular focus on the Middle East and on the thorny issues surrounding religion and peace building in the region right now, which is, of course, very topical to our issue at hand. So please, I welcome Olav, and the word is yours.
Thank you so much for this grand invitation, and also to have this opportunity to speak to such an audience. As Trønder, as Åfjording, I'm very happy to be back here, but it is a very serious and also a very crucial matter that gathers us. Unfortunately, it is a matter that is even more important today than it has been for many days and years. And I would like to start by referring to 2 recent experiences. One was in Erbil, in Kurdistan, Iraq, 2 weeks ago, where I met with students like you, who had fled from Mosul. They were Christians, they were Yazidis, they belonged to different groups, also some Muslim groups. And they asked, what is your future? What do you want? What makes it possible for you to remain here? And they said, security, security, security. We are afraid. And when we know what happens to them and to their families and to their daily life in Mosul, we understand. That cannot happen again. It will be the end of their lives, it will be the end of everything. Of course, they ask for security. But if we link that to the theme of your great festival and to this evening, it is the extreme example of the combination of religion and discrimination. And we should be aware of how dangerous this combination can be. The other experience I think we all have had is the shock, in a way, the announced and expected shock of what it means to have a new president in the United States, who got the idea that that country would be much more safe if he declared that people from 7 countries, and none of these countries have brought terrorists, known terrorists, to the United States so far, are banned from entrance. But Christians and maybe Yazidis could come in. Discrimination, extreme discrimination. And it makes the life of the students in Erbil who escaped from Mosul even more dangerous. Now they are not only fearing their potential enemies around them for the sake of what has happened, but also for the sake of that they are picked out as being the privileged, and therefore also, again, a much higher risk of being a target for terrorism and violence. So, we live in a more dangerous world. And some in this world live in a much more dangerous world. And we have heard an example of what it means. And thank you for sharing this reality with us. So we are not discussing an academic issue in that sense, but we are discussing an issue that really should concern you as students and as whatever we are, whether we are professors or religious leaders or practitioners. What is actually the relationship between discrimination and religion? We can discuss that from many perspectives. We can discuss it from the perspective of what is discriminating religious communities. I mean, religious freedom as a very important issue. In a way, religious freedom and paragraph 18 in the Human Rights Declaration, which was actually written with assistance from the World Council of Churches, which I represent. It belongs to the heart of our organization and the Fellowship of Churches to promote religious freedom. Another aspect which we have to touch when we discuss discrimination and religion is the more and very difficult question, self-critical question. How is our own religion and how are other religions actually both in itself a source and an inspiration, used or abused, we can discuss it, for discrimination? And we can discuss this from the perspective of the past or of the future. I will choose to use my few minutes to discuss it from the perspective of the future. I admit that there are many, many examples of discrimination in the name of my religion, Christianity, as there are many, many examples of discrimination in your religion, and in the name of Hindu, of Buddhism, of Judaism. We can all find them, and you can teach them to your students and let them know what these maps means from the past up till today. But I will choose the perspective of the future and ask, how can we, whether we are religiously active or whether we identify ourselves with religion or not, make a difference? The only thing we can change is the future. We cannot change the past, but we can make another future. And therefore, my question as leading a fellowship of 350 Christian churches who came from 1948 and the writing of the Human Rights Declaration and who have a history about uniting in a fight against apartheid, for the civil rights movements in the United States, for religious freedom, we still have to ask, what do we do now? What is our contribution to a future without discrimination? And without discrimination based on religious identities or based on our own religion. And to be a theologian, I have to ask myself, what does it mean to believe in God? when we discuss these issues. It is that basic. Discrimination is actually an attack on my belief in God. Because believing in God is to believe in the creator of all human beings, not only some of us, which is not a theoretical point to make. In the United States, the Christian nation of the world, at least some want to call it like that, there was a definition of black people as 3/5 of a human being in the 19th century, in their legal system. It was not only an idea, it was a legal point. There were people who had a 100% status as human beings and people who had a 60% status as human beings. This is what a colleague of mine called America's original sin. He used a theological description, actually I think very well and very adequately, to say this is a deep, deep system of thought that goes far beyond the legal level, into the moral level, into the personal identity, into the historical identity, into our identity as human beings. That we think in this way, that there is something like white superiority, that there is something that somebody actually is better and should be privileged. And if we ask a question to Europeans, what is our original sin? I don't think our answer had to be very different. There is a sense of superiority that has gone through our history the last centuries, and that we see now come to the surface again in a new way, because we now have a much more mixed population in Europe than we've had for many, many years. So, that is one part of the theological question. What is our original sin? The other part of the theological question is, what does it mean to believe in God as the creator of all? Because, as you said, this is really about the issue of rights. And if we ask about rights in the concept of legal rights, it has to do with moral rights. It has to do with accountability. What kind of accountability do I have as a human being, as a citizen of Norway, or as a person living in Switzerland for the moment? There is a lot. There's a lot of legal rights and legal obligations and accountability. But as moral human beings, whether we are Christians, Muslims, or non-believers, I would say any belief in God would say that you are as accountable to any human being as you are to God. Because if everybody is created in the image of God, to degrade or to discriminate the value of another human being is to attack God as the creator of all. And this is a very radical and extremely challenging part of our theology, if we take it seriously. And to quote the New Testament, St. Paul says, when he discusses what is the relationship between Jews and the Christians that have become Christians without being Jews, he says, the only way to answer that question is to say, there is no partiality in God. In a way, it links to your point. If we look at it from the perspective of God, we cannot allow ourselves to be partial. We have to acknowledge our differences, but we cannot, in God's name, be partial. 3/5 of human beings, 100% human beings, whatever. But there is a third theological point I would like to make, which is very challenging because it has to do exactly with the issue of the future. If we believe in God, we also believe in God in the sense of having hope, that something can change, that God actually can change something beyond what we see is possible now. And that is my vision, which I really want to share with you, and I hope you will share with me, that what we see in the world today is not what it has to be. It doesn't have to be so that religion is the indicator and the inspiration of dividing and polarizing and discriminating among us as human beings. It can be different. And that is our faith expressed as hope. But this hope in God has to correspond to our actions. Hope is more than wishing something or being optimistic. Hope is your attitude towards the other in the perspective of the future. What do we expect in terms of what do we want to change? And what do we want to be part of as this change? And in this perspective, let me conclude, at least at this point, saying let me put it in a positive sense. I believe that there is one criterion we should use when we discuss religion. In a positive, in a theological, in a self-critical or an externally critical way. And that is, does religion give hope to live or not? If it doesn't, I think we should be very critical and ask, is this really worthy the name of religion in terms of a way to organize our life as faith in God? Thank you.
Well, thank you so much to all three speakers, and thanks to you, we are on time. Certainly not thanks to me, who actually overdrew, but you saved the event. It is now 8 o'clock and time for a 15-minute break. There is drinks and things served over there at the bar. And we convene again 1:15 to resume questions and discussion. Thank you. time to start the discussion, Q&A session. So welcome back, everybody. We have a procedure for the remaining part of our panel, which is that I will start and open up the discussion by asking a question to each of the speakers. And then we open up for the floor to ask questions. And then you should simply raise your hand if you want to ask something, and Johanna will come to you with the microphone. So just wave, and she should come to you. Okay. So I will follow the order of the speakers with my questions. And the first one then goes to Marina. You were speaking in the beginning about the euphoria that followed the fall of the Shah, and also that went before it, before the revolution in Iran, 1979. So my question is, and then those events developed perhaps in a different direction to what you and your friends were hoping for. So how does one know where demands for political change are coming from and where they are heading? Is there any way of knowing that when you're in the midst of a justified quest for change, for example?
Good question. That's a very good question. That's
thank
actually
you.
something I always talk about. Now, this was a very short form of the talk that I usually give, but I usually include that in my longer talks. So I always say to students that horror in history doesn't happen overnight. Now, it doesn't matter if we just had a revolution, a movement, a new election, anything really. In any society, as I said, there's never that people come out and say we want a horrible dictatorship. I mean, people always want better. That is just a human desire. We always want to live better, but we don't always get it. And I always say, pay attention, because horror in history doesn't happen overnight. It's not that we go to bed tonight and tomorrow we have Hitler, Stalin, Mao, Khomeini, or Trump for that matter on our hands. It happens little by little. Basically, it is like a faucet dripping in the background of ordinary life. We lose our liberties drop by drop. The very first danger sign, if you study history, in my humble opinion, I have studied many of them. Actually, my grandparents escaped the 1917 communist revolution. They escaped Russia, and they ended up in Iran. And then I ended up escaping the Islamic revolution, ended up in Canada, and then who knows, I might be escaping again. So usually the first sign in a society that is going in the wrong, dangerous direction of losing liberties is when press, when journalists, writers, thinkers, professors, they come under attack. So when you see the press is being slandered and they are limited in one way or another, it starts small, then it gets bigger in what they can or they cannot say, then it is a danger sign. It means that that movement or revolution or whatever it is going in the wrong direction. The second is when people of a certain religion, ethnicity, people from the wrong side of the border, the wrong country, the wrong city, I mean, you name it, they are discriminated against in a widespread, systematic manner. It doesn't start with concentration camps, it never does. It starts with limitations being put and fear being spread in the society against a certain group. That's danger sign number 2. And usually when you have the 2, then the third one is usually an attack on the judiciary. So when the judiciary in a country goes under attack, that is another danger sign. And if you have the 3, then you should do something intelligent, not something violent, something intelligent really quickly, or it's all going to be gone in a matter of months.
Thank you. I'm sure many of your points here can also be picked up in the discussion. So I will proceed to my next question to Junaid. And it was very difficult, not just because of this attack on the Swedish personality, but because of the coherence of your talk. It was a bit difficult to sort of find a string to
I planned it.
yeah,
so.
that's what I thought. Now, so the question is kind of a little bit on the side of your topic, because your topic was about the tranquility that you find in God and which helps you not to discriminate, let's say, simplistically.
Or makes it unnecessary, actually.
Makes it unnecessary. So, as someone who, for those who don't have a belief in God or a faith, I know this is beside your topic, but
Sure.
so what do you do then?
Well, basically, having faith, having the confidence, and is the key for not oppressing the other. Because I believe that the biggest oppressors are the biggest cowards, because they're afraid that they will not be able to manage if something happens. They are afraid of the other so much. I was just giving this example. If I slap you, now I just slapped you, so I'm more afraid of you, because you can slap me back. So the best thing to do is probably to slap you again. Or now I slap you twice. Oops. Now I really have to do something about that, because it's even more likely that you will come back at me. So this is an escalation that we experience. But for those of us who don't necessarily allowed the faith into the hotel room that I was talking about, they said, nah, I don't really need it right now, which is perfectly fine. It's a human choice. My experience in my practice as a doctor also is I observed that we human beings are very, very, very biased. If you look at something like cognitive theory, cognitive therapy, and how we treat people with these fears and anxieties, if you ask, you will find that people base their emotions on certain thoughts, which are based on certain beliefs that they have in their head. And when you analyze these thoughts and beliefs with the patient, you frequently find, well, not frequently, but you almost always find that these thoughts and beliefs are wrong. We call them thought viruses. An example would be like, everybody is looking at me. Well, nobody is looking at you. You're not that interesting, to tell you the truth. And nobody really remembers. You're not that important. But if you don't have that, a speech like that can be very, very, for example, nerve-breaking. So we have to find that confidence in ourselves and in our society in the right sources. If you look for this confidence, if you look for this comfort in the wrong places, within the wrong groups, you will for certain end up in trouble, not only for yourself, but for the people around you. So I advise you to, and anybody, and myself, to be more critical about our own thoughts and beliefs, and look at them a bit closer. You will find that many of them have alternatives. And it may change our position in life very quickly. And, but faith, I have found to be a very good solution. And it's and one thing that I have to say, for those who believe also, I can say that the most important thing is to be sincere. Religion is not a spectator sport. You know, it's not like football that you watch. You have to play this thing. So you are not supposed to be a supporter of your religion. You're supposed to be a practitioner of your religion. You're supposed to practice what you believe. If you're not doing this, it's like supporting a football team. You are fat, you are on your sofa, you're eating chips, and you're shouting. The football field is not there. It's outside, and you start better playing. That's what I can say.
Thank you. So can rights be a source of security and comfort, or sort
Well,
of?
let me tell you one thing quickly about the rights. Rights are very important, and most of the Islamic jurisprudence is, as you said, is based on rights. Rights of the people, and which is based on rights of the Creator, as you have said. We love the created due to the Creator. This is one of the principles of Islam. But also, as human beings, we have to be very, very careful. My children, I have 3 kids, and they, like all children, they are very interested in their rights. He hit me first. So you have to learn to forgive. As we were talking in the break, there is a cognitive science experiment which I find very interesting. If you put a sensor between 2 people's fingers and say, press and switch places, and just press exactly as much as the other guy has pressed your finger, you quickly realize that it escalates very quickly. Because our nervous system takes away the weight of our own body. It subtracts it. So you think you are pressing exactly as much as he pressed my finger, but no. You are pressing actually a lot more than that. So that causes an escalation. So for us human beings to be non-biased and fair is close to impossible. So the best strategy in these situations is to learn to forgive. This is why religion is teaching us to forgive. And this is why there is a religion to get this bias out of. Because if we are led to our biased sense of rights, it will be a very short trip in this world, I believe. We will very soon. It's like if you ask for an eye to an eye, we will have a lot of blind people around.
Thank you. Now, my question to Olav would be about hope, which you concluded your speech on the topic of hope for the future. Now, this question is a bit complicated, but there are people then whose actions seem very hopeless, or that they can't lead to anything constructive. For example, ISIS, or we can take extremist groups in Europe, for example. It would be easy to say, looks hopeless, that trajectory. But maybe they are driven by another hope. They also have hope, but it's a conflicting hope with that of other groups. So can one reconcile different hopes and channel it towards something? Because, I mean, that would, well, yeah, basically that's the question. I won't give the answer.
That's the professor.
No, but thank you for this very pertinent question. I think that is one of the challenges with religion. That everything can be a way to regulate, which is also the meaning of religion, regulate what is for this group, and then define the limit of this group, and then define the others as the others. The inclusiveness of religion can very easily be an exclusiveness. And that is particularly true also when we speak about hope. That my hope is that we, the white Norwegians in Norway, who are still Lutherans, will be a majority in Norway forever. Well, that's a decent hope, but it doesn't help very much for me as a Lutheran if that means that others are not living well in Norway, that Catholics or Muslims or non-believers, whoever we are, find a way to live together and find this as a hopeful future for all of us. Then it doesn't help me as a Lutheran Christian either. And I think we have to be very open exactly for that kind of question in our time, because there is no way to isolate ourselves anymore in this world. We can fight against globalization with all kinds of means, but it is a reality that we live in one world, more than we have done before. We have done that before, but no more than before. And there is no way to see a hope for me that is not really also hope for all of us. Tomorrow I will discuss climate change and religion in Oslo, and the role of religion in relations to labor movements and other people's movement and so on, even to the market. And I think we have to be much more open to understanding ourselves as contributing to something more than what is only ourselves. And in this perspective, I mean, what we discuss here is that we have to be aware of how we are in practice discriminating or not discriminating in the way we develop our hopes. Because they are driving our actions. So I think, therefore, it's time to discuss what is our hope from a very critical perspective.
Thank you. And I have now taken a lot of space, both with speaking and in having the privilege to ask my own personal questions. And I will now turn to the audience, and I hope you have many questions, and please don't feel that whatever it is you're thinking of is not important or so. The only thing we ask is to be as short as possible when you pose the question, so that the question does not turn into a lecture like mine easily does. So, please. Johanna.
Is this okay? It's on. I have a question for all of you, but especially to the religious leaders. From a Western perspective, I'm a Muslim, but I also believe in a secular state. So when the state imposes laws to create a more equal society when it comes to women, sexual minorities, etc., how does that follow through in the religious communities as well, like women's right to reproduce, when that is in some way contradicting to religious literature, and also gay marriage, and also be able to have Muslim religious leaders that are women, for instance. So how does that balance go with the state and with the church or mosque or religion? Thank you.
So maybe I should start. Well, you asked several questions, so and they're all equally important, but I'll try to give short answers so that more people will have a chance to ask the questions. The first question about a secular state. The Muslim is somebody who respects the law of the state, but would also like to experience his religion in a full way. So, and I think the state and the secular state, as long as it does not interfere with the principal rights of a Muslim human being, there is no problems with that. And this is the experience, and this is why many, many Muslims live in the West when they want to emigrate. They don't go to Muslim countries, they come to these countries, because they experience and feel that they have these rights here. So, in principle, I don't see any problems with that. You asked about gay rights. Yeah, for example, Islam is a religion where the book, the Quran, we had a discussion over the dinner today actually about that. Allah, God, who is timeless and has the full knowledge and the full perspective, knows what has happened, what will happen, he's omniscient, he knows everything, has made some decrees. And he has defined the life, what is right and what is wrong for us. A Muslim believes is a person who takes these principles and accepts them. Now, what is the practice is a different thing. So can a person be gay and Muslim? Yes, of course. But can a Muslim become proud to be gay and Muslim? No. That is a direct answer to your question. Because in the first one, it's an act, it's a choice, he is doing it, but he also addresses that the God's choice to this act, he agrees with. But in the second one, he doesn't have to be gay or not actually. He is going against the decree of the God, and this is going against the principles of Islam, because you have to take it as a package. You can't pick from things. Then you can be a person who has sympathy with Islam, but not all of it, some kind of parts of it. This is how religion defines these rights. Did I miss something?
Yeah, it's literally about legislations within the state that
Yeah. You said one quick answer to your question: can there be female religious leaders? There are female religious leaders, and they exist, and they lecture everywhere around in the world. So I think you should attend to more Islamic conferences. You will see them. I met many, and they are very impressive, actually.
Olaf?
No, but, if I may also hear you questioning me as representing the Christian churches, it's a very important question, because I think we have seen historically many ways to combine state and religion, also in this country. Since 1st of January this year is the real, or at least another step in separating church and state. But when we see the many options in the world for how this combination can be made, I'm more and more convinced that the state should not be secular in the sense that it is anti-religious, but secular in the state that it is not favorizing any religious group or any religious platform as the platform for the way to live together. Because then you easily makes something discriminatory. I mean, it's almost impossible to avoid discrimination if you make these connections. The Jewish state, which is now a very important issue for Israel, to be acknowledged as a Jewish state, which has many historical reasons, but it creates problems that is unavoidable in my view. What does it mean then to not be a Jew living in Israel? But we could make these examples also in this so-called Islamic states of different kinds, and you see the problem in many ways. My last comment is that religious freedom even can be used as a way to hide discrimination. For example, by saying that to religious freedom, it belongs that it is up to the family to decide what happens in the family. Even if it is discrimination or violence against the spouse or the children, is it a matter of religious freedom to use violence against your children? In my view, not. It should be the task of the state to criminalize all kinds of violence, including what happens in the family, and not use religious freedom as an excuse.
Thank you. I think it was... Still go.
Thank you.
You're next. No, yeah.
I know that there is, well, my name is Jose, I'm from Guatemala, and I'm from the worship family. And I know that today we have a lot of leaders that are women, but I don't know if in the future we will have women that will be priests, and if they will have the same rights in the different religions, Christianity or Judaism or Muslim, or to become part of, like, in all the active perspectives of religion. And the other thing is that I understand when you say that you have to accept the religion as a whole package. You don't have to pick. But what happened when, I don't know, for example, you are a woman and you are Muslim, and when you are growing, you love your religion, but then you, at the age of, I don't know, 16, you find out that you like a woman and you are a lesbian. What happened there? Because sometimes religion tells you that that is wrong and something is wrong with you and you don't deserve the love of God. So what happened in that moment, and how this, I don't know, in this case or in each case, in each religion, what happened when that happened, when this kind of things happen, and how these people can feel part of their religion without being excluded. Yeah, thank you.
Should I?
Do you want to start?
Yeah, well,
Marina, do you want to?
I guess I could, but I'm afraid that my ideas are a little bit revolutionary. So, but here it goes. I mean, I'm a Catholic. I have been a member of, well, I'm originally Russian Orthodox, but my family are, but I converted to Catholicism just before the Islamic Revolution. So I am a Catholic, but as a Catholic, I believe that gays and lesbians should allowed to get married, and I'm fighting for it within the church. I have not been excommunicated yet, but it might happen in the future, and I'm not going to care, because to me, the church is an institution created by man. And my relationship with God does include the church, but if the church doesn't want me there, that's not going to affect my relationship with God. I believe that it is not my place to judge. I am not the judge, period. So if a gay man or a lesbian woman wants to get married, wants to have kids, do whatever it is that they find right and fit, as long as it fits within the laws. I mean, in Canada, we allow gay marriage. We have it. So as long as it is allowed, I mean, I have, as a Christian, as a Catholic, I have absolutely nothing against it. And I would love, 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 please mark my words, to become the next Pope. I would love to. I volunteer.
We will vote
I
for you.
volunteer. You know, I volunteer. Now, the thing is, from, you know, where I stand, again, the church is an organization. The church is the representative of God, kind of, but not directly. Because the church is made of men. And these men sin and they make mistakes. So I stay within the Catholic Church even though I disagree with a lot of things that it has done than it is doing right now. I could have a fight. I could cut and run, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stay, I'm going to speak out, and I'm going to fight. And the church has come a long way since the Middle Ages, and I have hope that it will still go a long way. It is doing a lot of good, but it is also doing a lot of bad. So I hope to change the bad for the good. Instead of turning my back and running in the opposite direction, I prefer to stay and put up a fight and hope and try and work toward making the church a more inclusive and a more accepting place for everyone, because it is not my place to judge. God's love is for everybody.
I certainly agree that it's not our position to judge anybody. We have to look at ourselves first, and we will find and discover many more mistakes than others have. And we really know them very well, because we have them. So who are you when nobody is there? But when it comes to the law, as we say, we do not judge, God does. And he has judged, according to the Islam, that the act of homosexuality, for example, is cursed. This is the same in Christianity. And I'm a quite orthodox Muslim, I will say, in many ways. So Islam is not open to reformation. So this will not change, because the package is complete. But I will tell you this much. The person's acts and what he does or what he doesn't are separate from who he is. Islam definitely addresses that there is something called homosexuality. There are many things in this life. We are not equal. We don't believe in equality. We believe in a way in justice. We have some people are short. We have many challenges in life. Some people are rich. Some people are poor. Some people are very, very beautiful, which is hard. Ask me. So there are many challenges in life, and the purpose of our being here in this world, as I say, like we are in a big oven and we are cooking, hopefully come out as nice cakes, and the oven is an uncomfortable place. Ask the cake, he doesn't want to be there. And our challenges are different. It can be feelings towards the same sex can be a challenge. And I do know also professionally that there are a lot of people who feel that. And some people have different feelings about different things, which makes it difficult to fit in the society. But rules are for everybody. And, but we do not condemn those people's personalities. We love them as much as anybody else loves them. And it is a challenge, and their acts is the concern, not how they feel or who they are. So a person, as I say, can be gay, can be something else. It's his choice in life, and it's a free world. But changing the religion, Islam, which we believe is perfect and sent by God, this is how a Muslim believes, is not within the power of the created, like myself, or the other Muslims, or any other human being. That is the position of Islam, told very shortly.
Can I just ask a follow-up one there? Can one pronounce on God's love? Because, I mean, theoretically, God can love anyone he likes, so to speak, even though there can be a condemnation or something. But does that reflect on the... I mean, I know I'm going down a blind alley here, but I'm trying to figure out how you look at the question of God's love of this person, not just as a, okay, it's okay, I love you anyway, kind of bit patronizing love, but a real love.
Yeah. Muhammad, the love is there anyway. It's in the, Allah says that I created 100 parts of rahmah, love, forgiveness. I gave one part to the world where you all share. So the little crocodile which carries his baby crocodile in his mouth without hurting is doing this within this one piece of love that Allah has put into this world. And he says, the 99 I saved to forgive people. So there is forgiveness. We are not, this is not a blind end that whatever you do, you are finished. Whatever you do, you are possible to be forgiven as long as you recognize the Creator. You recognize His power, and all your faults can be forgiven, but this will be in His court, not in ours. So we cannot be judges in that one.
Well, we are touching many significant issues, both about what it means to be church or religion, but also particularly issues related between...
We have no church, so therefore I'm free of that one.
Yeah, but it's quite interesting, but also quite important to reflect on how much issues related to reproduction, and rebirth and the continuation of our clan or family or group and religion is connected. And I think we have to be aware of that both in a historical perspective, but also in a critical perspective of today. And actually, I believe that I belong to a church that has its identity of Reformation. And this year we celebrate 500 years of this Reformation. And the point here I would like to make is that to believe in God as I see it, and also as our Lutheran Church see it, is to believe in the God who is speaking a living word into each context in which we live. Sure. And that we are also able to learn from changing historical realities. Luther had opinions that is absolutely impossible for me to imagine could be accepted in the Church of Norway today. But still, we think we can learn something from his approach to saying, well, the real purpose of the Bible is the gospel, the good news about God's love. But what it means, we have to understand in our own time, in our own context. And I think for many, it means today that we believe that we understand that we are much more diverse than we believed, also in terms of sexual orientation. And therefore have to find ways to live together in a responsible way with that knowledge.
Can I add a very short thing? I mean, I agree that we have to learn to live together. And if you look at the history of the Ottoman Empire, where they ruled 600 years, a very major part of the world, which It's hundreds of millions of people with many faiths, without major troubles, really, for most of the time. And they address that. And there are people who dress like women, and they were not persecuted. They had their places when in the mosque. There are rulings about where they should be standing in the mosque. So persecution is another thing. Acceptance is another thing. But changing the religion to fit into what you think is better is another thing. So we are trying to separate these things now.
Thank you. Yes, this is the lady here. And
Hi, my question. Oh, I don't think this is working. Is it working? Or am I
Johanna?
not using it correctly?
yeah,
We here.
Hello?
Speak into it.
Yeah. So my question is actually, how do we tackle internal discrimination? Because I'm a young Christian from Malaysia, and the churches in my country are still very conservative. As a Christian, I believe in love, and I believe that we should not judge. So I support, sexual minorities, and I believe that everyone should practice the religion that they want to practice. But I have a lot of friends who would tell me, no, that means that you're not really Christian. That means you're going to hell. And they always add in the ending, I'm telling you out of love. So it's very difficult, yeah. And because of this, it makes me wonder whether I have to choose between the beliefs that I have and my religion. And so I wonder, how do we tackle this internal discrimination that's happening within each religion? Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
I can
yes.
make an attempt to answer, because this is in a way my daily work, my daily life. How do we deal with different Christian churches and different opinions within the churches and among the churches? What kind of unity can we actually speak about? And the reality you describe is very much what we see, I would say, in all churches, not only in your context, but also in your context. I believe in the history of my organization in the sense that I believe it is possible to have a dialogue with one another as Christians in this case, to talk about what are our differences and what are our common bases, and come to some conclusion that, well, there are some basic elements we share and some in which we differ. And in some of these, we can accept the differences. I think we have a history of learning behind us to live with these differences without condemning one another, but also with the respect of understanding, well, I'm not understanding everything myself. There might be more than I understand, but which opens up for another, let's say, level of tolerance, which I believe belongs to a Christian attitude. And I think that is making us able to be people of faith moving forward, and not stopping here and say, well, we cannot move forward until we have agreed about A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on. I think it's a time for us to focus on what is actually our common calling to serve in the world, and then see what can we do together, and we can do a lot together. We are not able to say, because I'm right, you are wrong, and that's the end of the story. I mean, who can judge in that sense? But we have to continue with our convictions and our beliefs in this kind of dialogue, which is more than just talking, actually also addressing one another in a decent way, but also with the purpose of finding a way forward.
Just one thing, if I may add here, because what you said really did touch me, because I've been in that situation that I've been told I'm going to go to hell more than once, many, many times. So I'm going to go to hell many, many times. But what I can tell you is that someone who loves you will never, ever tell you you're going to go to hell. Never. The person who tells you that is speaking out of a place of a very strong human emotion, which is called fear. So they are telling you you're going to go to hell simply because they are afraid of going to hell. So they are projecting their fear on you. That makes them feel better about themselves. So don't listen to that, because they are not the ones who will decide if you're going to go to heaven or hell or anywhere else. Thank God it is not their decision. Your relationship with God is your relationship with God. Don't let anyone into it. It's a two-way road. It is you, it is God. Let it stay there. Don't let anyone else in.
So, this is exactly what I believe, that this decision is not a human decision. Although I'm speaking from another religion, actually God defines this, and this is his right. Actually going there is actually crossing his rights, and no human being who is created has this right. I agree. But if he has already defined it, and if you believe in it, I mean, I'm not going to go there because it's a personal belief thing. If you do believe that he has already defined it, now expecting the God to change according to your belief is kind of also unfair for his rights again. Now you are crossing his rights if suddenly things change. When it comes to Islam, we do have people who think differently. But I believe in one thing. Believing in at least what a 10-year-old child who grew up in a religious family believes as a Muslim, and he teaches his child, is the basic Islam. Apart from that, there are so many complicated discussions about so many minor issues. I think Ghazali said it best. He said, when there are two Muslims in a place, there are at least three opinions. So it is like that. We human beings, we like discussing things and making them complicated, and I think that's in our nature also. But the most important thing is to go back to the rights and look at whose rights are you crossing. If you're not crossing God's rights, what the other people say isn't necessarily that important, because we are human beings, we are fallible, and we are very prone to fear and also our own ego. So the only person who doesn't have fear and that ego, like we do, he has an ego, obviously, but that's God. He has the right to have it, is God. So we follow his lead, not what our ego wants. That's another story.
First of all, I would like you for coming here. At the beginning, I would like to say something that I've always kept inside my heart. My friends, Islam is like any other religion, a religion that has different interpretations, and a religion that has been abused and exploited by politicians, and that we shouldn't relate Islam to certain countries and certain organizations. My first question is for Marine. You have mentioned that many people in Iran suffered, and I'm really sorry that they had to go through this, but do you think that Islam itself as a religion is the reason behind their sufferings, or the politicians and their own selfish interests? Because I think it's very essential for us to differentiate between Islam and the policies of governments. And I totally agree with you that everyone has to be free to practice the religion he or she wants to practice. And Islam came to assure this. God, chapter of Al-Kafirun, verse number 6 said, "Lakum dinukum waliya din." You have your religion and I have mine. My second question is for the second speaker. It is related to Islamophobia. We as Muslims, what should we do to fight against such campaigns that target Muslims and Islam? And the last question for the last speaker, why is Islam a problem for many Western leaders, especially the leaders of right parties in many countries in Europe, for instance, in Netherlands, Poland, and in Belgium? And thank you so much. And finally, in response to my friend, he was talking about women and their positions in Islam. I'm a Muslim and I'm proud to be a Muslim. I have 3 sisters. They are covered, and 2 of them have done their PhD in sociology and medicine, and they work as professors in universities. And the third one is going to discuss her thesis in a week. So I think women in Islam have freedom to do many things, despite the fact that you hear in the media. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
I know that we are running out of time. I also try to give a very quick answer. What to do for the Muslims in this age of Islamophobia, you asked. I think there's only one thing to do, which is to start behaving like Muslims and stop behaving like supporters of a football team. That's the first thing we have to do, and be sincere in our faith. And be sincere and reflect this in our behavior. When you explain something to a person with words, where does it go? It goes to the ears, and from the ears it goes to the brain, to the frontal cortex. And who lives in the frontal cortex? All these suspicions, and really, it takes a very long way to make it to the heart. There is a shorter way to the heart. It's from heart to heart. And this short way is through your behavior and who you are. If you can reflect what Islam is teaching in your behavior, you don't have to be afraid of anybody. We say, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel, we believe in God, and He is our protector. And also we start behaving like those people that we look up onto. So start playing football. Stop eating chips in the sofa. That's my advice.
Marina?
As I said, during, when I was speaking, I stand with my Muslim brothers and sisters. So that, I think, is my way of saying that I do not blame Islam for what happened to me. I think it is clear. And I don't believe any religion in the world is by itself, because a religion is faith, is an idea. So an idea cannot kill, an idea cannot torture. People kill, people torture. So it is people who use various religions, not just Islam, any religion as a tool to gain power over others. So I would never blame Christianity for the crimes of Christians. I would never blame Islam for the crimes of some Muslims. I would never blame the idea of communism for the crimes of Stalin, for example. Those are ideas. We have to differentiate between what people do and ideas or religion.
My answer is a follow-up of these. I think many, and unfortunately more than before, Western leaders are afraid. It's a matter of fear. It's a matter of lack of knowledge. It's a matter of lack of distinguishing between accountability in terms of what are we making ourselves in our relationships. I mean, wherever we are, we should be accountable to one another for what we are doing. But there is a lack of accountability both ways here, and there is a lack of communication. I'm quite sure that many, I would say the great majority, both of Christians and Muslims, don't have this general mistrust against one another. And the experience of many Christians, for example, in the Middle East, is that it is quite possible to live together, even if it is challenging. But politics also have dynamics, and one of them is that I have, I think, many examples, and I could mention them to you, that politics need a kind of counterpart to make themselves known and popular. There is always a need of the enemy, and at the moment the enemy ideology and the enemy group fits now into the terrorist attacks, the terrorist image of Islam. I think this is an enormous risk, not only for Muslims, but for the whole world, that this kind of polarization continues into the great circles of power. And I think it is not only a fight between Christians and Muslims. I think that is not really the issue. It's really a fight about the soul of what it means to be Christian, or to be Muslim, or to be Jew, or to be Hindu, or to be Buddhist, or whatever it is. Are we willing to be accountable to the fellowship we have to develop in each nation and on the international arena?
Can I add, I just want to interject myself here, because I kind of think that while I understand that as a Muslim you want to contribute to reducing Islamophobia, I still feel that we should know that these parties who are playing the Islamophobia card, they predate 9/11 and all the terrorist things that happened. So to some extent, they would be there with the kind of message, even if there were no Muslims around. This is very important because it's not Muslims' fault. They haven't, no one has done anything that really explains this behavior, even though they can draw credits on terror attacks or whatever, but that's not where they come from. So it's our responsibility also as not Muslims, as secular people, to confront this kind of politics, because I would say that they are their real enemies, the liberal leftists, these bloody politically correct idiots in our own nation. That's the real target. So they're going to go, okay, who supports the Jews, who supports the gays, who supports the Muslims? Hit hard. So it's our responsibility also. It's not just, oh, if Muslims were more moderate or whatever. I think that's also partly misleading. So everyone has to really pull the load and take that deep political conflict. And it's not to say that, oh, they don't have legitimate reason for whatever they're doing, but still, say who you are, state your thing and talk, but don't drag people who haven't done anything into this old political conflict in Europe, I would say also. So it's like, yeah.
If I may,
But
I
we
just
have
add one example.
one more
I saw now
question.
in Germany that the right-wing party that is now appealing to this Islamophobia is strongest in the eastern part of Germany, where you have the less of immigrants.
Yes, exactly.
In those parts of Germany where you have most immigrants and most Muslims, they are weak.
Yeah.
But also
So-
that reflects what I've said, that if you look at the eastern part of Germany, you will still find that these are still, after so many years, more economically challenged
Exactly.
parts.
Yes.
So you have all this
Exactly.
other
Yeah,
experience.
where
all
you
the
have
other
all this fear in you and
Yeah.
lack of confidence in
Lack
your
of
future.
confidence.
Extremism just gets support.
Exactly.
There is one more question, and then unfortunately we will have to end.
Test? Yes. Okay, perfect. I'm Daniel. I'm from Austria. And though I have not really been discriminated by my religion, I have been discriminated more by so-called small discriminations. For example, by my clothing, by my haircut, whatsoever. And you said, Professor Janit, that we are both on one end, on the other end of discrimination. But during your presentation, you actually were saying that you didn't know if Brazil had a king or what kind of president were there in Brazil, and also making fun or joking about Ulrike's nationality, Swedish. So my question here is, where is the line between humor and making fun on other people and discrimination?
I think
This goes to you. And also, Ulrike, I would like you to hear your opinion. Thank you.
That's a very good question. And as a person who lived in the West, first of all, I think you look pretty good. I don't know why they picked up on your clothes. You have swag, boy. So I learned this word from my 12-year-old son, so I keep using it. Now, the point of it, humor is a very important thing. You know, there were some jokes. The political correctness has come to a level that you can't even tell a joke anymore. You can't call a dog a dog. You have to call him a canine American. So yeah, there is humor in life, but if it's not degrading, and if you are not really meaning what you are saying, I don't think that, and Ulrika knows that, I do not mean and believe that there is anything wrong with the Swedish. But where is the line? As somebody who lived in the West for a very long time and who has been called names, like Yalmar Yalla, by people who are very educated, who have PhDs, who work at the universities. I'm not talking about a bus driver somewhere. I'm talking about people who really are supposed to know what they are talking about, who thought they were funny. The first time it's funny, but if I tell them that, you know what, this is offending me, this is breaking me. Now that is the line. Once a person expresses that he's taking this seriously and it's hurting him, repeating this is discrimination and it shouldn't be done. You can be ignorant, you may not even realize that you are actually doing discrimination or saying something to a person because the other person or party can be very sensitive. And I believe the responsibility goes to both sides. The person who is offended or discriminated has the responsibility to express it, not by keeping it because it would be unfair. And after this expression, if the behavior continues, then this is probably crossing the line. That is how I define it personally, in my personal life too.
Yes, thank you. Well, the joke is, of course, that as a Swede, we're used to this kind of abuse because...
Oh, come on, the victim!
But wait.
Wait.
Why? It's because they're envious, because Sweden is the best country in
There
the
you
world.
go.
That's how it is. So, you know, we have to stand a certain degree of this kind of sniping. No, but I think it is actually, joke apart, it's a good point.
Yeah.
Because people say things very carelessly, and sort of there can be remarks about all sorts of things. I do it terribly much, and even when you say, okay, I state who my political enemies are, it's implicit in that you sort of disagree with them, and it very easily turns into a top-down approach that you say, okay, someone who's a right-winger, I think they're stupid, and that is really a danger. And I think your point illustrates that it's so easy to go there carelessly, because actually, even though, but this is my point with asking even about ISIS, who are monstrous in so many ways, but actually, in the context of the wars that are going on, when we dehumanize them as well, we've done exactly, precisely what we accuse them of doing, not taking seriously that they are also human beings with needs, hopes, etc. We don't ask where they're coming from. We just look at the expression of something, and we do the same with our own extreme right-wingers, extreme left-wingers, etc. So I think I'm thankful for that remark, although it's of course totally off the mark, but you know. And I thank you for your question, which, oops, I knew I'd do this. I thank you for the question, which is very good. And on this note, I have to conclude. We are very delayed, but thank you. So, and thank you to the 3 speakers. And no, you. And I just got a message here saying we can continue the discussion on Twitter with hashtags isfit17 and label me. And thank you also so much to the organizers of ISFIT who've done a fantastic job also.